Hello everyone and welcome to LRN. Today we review the Baku Grand Prix and some awesome events today. First of all, big congrats to Max Verstappen and Red Bull after another brilliant race where they've got another 1-2. Sergio Perez coming home in second. Really strong performance from them. Obviously capitalizing on the fact that the Ferraris did DNF in this race, and both of them with their own separate engine issues, ending their races prematurely, but bringing home a 1-2 for Red Bull. So congratulations to them. And I think, as I predicted prior to the weekend starting, I predicted that there would be a 1-2 for Red Bull, with Verstappen coming home for a 1-2, and I'm glad to say I was correct. And I think that you look at the cars, and Horner said it himself, they set the cars up to be faster on a race day, and they were nearly quick enough for pole position on the Saturday, which was ominous to start with. And we saw the pace straight off the bat, with Perez getting Leclerc straight away into turn one. He didn't look like he was going to get caught by Leclerc. Obviously, Sainz as well, dropping back and forth, simply didn't have the pace. Don't know if the engine issue that ended up taking him out the race was impacting the actual pace issues he was having, but obviously ended his race prematurely, so we really wouldn't know what would have happened if his car was absolutely fine. But clearly didn't have the pace of the front three. His race ended early, coming home fourth. Well, sorry, when he was running in fourth, his race ended early on, and then Leclerc later in the race rolling into the pit lane with his own engine issues when he was still in a position to fight for the win. Really disappointing for Ferrari, but well done to Red Bull. Another brilliant drive. No strategy issues whatsoever. This time, no debate here around whether or not Perez was the strategy was in Max's favor or anything like that. Max was simply the quicker driver on the day. Obviously, we saw that Perez was quicker in qualifying, but on race pace, Verstappen had it today. And I predicted he was going to come back with a vengeance, and he has. So fair play to Max. I think even if the Ferraris had been on point, Max would have got that win today. Maybe Perez, with the issues that he had, basically just overheating his tyres straight away on the beginning of his stints. It looked like he was trying too hard, and Perez is someone famous for being brilliant on his tyres, so for him to have such issues after the beginning of his stints is really surprising. And I think he just took too much life out of the tyres at the beginning, and that cost him later into the runs, and you saw that in the total run pace, that Verstappen simply had his number today on race pace. So as I say, well done to them. Perez will come back stronger in another race. Perez now firmly second in the championship, 21-point gap to Max as well. So Max now with a 34-point gap to Charles Leclerc, and even George Russell now in fourth place, ahead of Carlos Sainz and Ferrari. Just Mercedes reliability keeping them in that position, but to see such a big gap now between Leclerc and Verstappen is just quite disappointing. I think we see the issues with the Ferrari engines today, with 4 Ferrari engines blowing out in one race, and it doesn't bode well. Obviously, at the beginning of the season, we kind of thought it would be the Red Bull powertrain that was having the problems with the issues that they had in Bahrain, both drivers not finishing, and again in Australia. It all things pointed to Red Bull having the issues with their engine, and was it going to be reliability issues that cost Max his drivers' championship, also retaining it into this year? And they have put that to bed, at least for now. Ferrari are the ones with the problems, and Red Bull are going to be really glad about that. But we did hear them asking Max to keep it easy on the radio, not to to keep temperatures cool, and to make sure that they got to the end, giving him set lap times he needed to hit just to get to the end of the race, keep everything safe. Because if he pushed too much, there are clearly reliability issues this year after the regulation changes. They don't want to take anything for granted. They had no reason to push, so Max came home to take that win. Brilliant calls from Red Bull all round. When Max was kicking up a fuss on the radio, they put him in his place. He should be doing what he's told. They knew what was going on. They were in a safe position. Fair play to Max. He clearly seemed to calm down. Later on, when they were back on the radio, he was just really calm. And fed back to the team about the tyres, the fact that they asked him to go too slowly. He may lose temperature in the tyres, which could cause him to have an incident later in the race if something were to happen where he lost grip because his tyres were too cold. So fair play, the team agreed with him, and he got to keep pace a bit higher just to keep the temps in the tyres, preventing any incidents from happening which weren't planned. So fair play. All round today, brilliant job by Red Bull, showing why they are the championship winning outfit, really recent championship winning outfit that they are. Obviously not winning constructors for a few years, but all the same people in that team, and they are still clearly showing why they managed to win all those titles in a row back when Seb Vettel was still driving for Red Bull. So brilliant performance from them. Ferrari, as we say, double DNF. Nothing to do with strategy today. Obviously, the engine issues and the engine issues that crossed over to the Alfa Romeo and the Haas cars today as well. So they definitely need to nip that in the bud, because if that carries on, we are going to see penalties as they are having to use too many parts to replace to get their cars on the grid. So then we're going to start seeing them qualifying further down the grid due to, say, 10-place grid penalties, things of that nature, depending on the number of parts they use and how the penalty applied for that replacement part when they use more than their allocation. So really could start to impact and massively later into the season if they do start to see those penalties come up. Yes, you would expect them to still get past all of the other teams, including Mercedes, as things stand, and get back to, say, third and fourth, assuming that they don't, have more reliability issues in the races or other things don't happen. But that isn't going to be good enough. Red Bull are already well out in front. They've now got an 80-point gap in the Constructors' Championship. Look, Ferrari need to hit back quickly if they're going to have a hope of getting that Constructors' title this season. So let's hope that they can. I'm not saying we need Ferrari to win the title, but we want a championship fight that goes to the end. In the constructors, obviously we had that with Max and Lewis last year in the drivers, but I want to see a fight in the constructors going down to the final race. This season's a prime opportunity to do it, but it relies on Ferrari to get their act together. So unlucky for them today. Hopefully, I'm sure they've got everyone in the engine factory working already non-stop to try and work out the issues that they've got, bring upgrades that are going to give them more reliability to the end of the season. I just hope they work, and I hope they work for the other teams as well. The customer cars like the Haas and the Alfa, it's going to impact them too. So let's hope that across the board those engine issues can be fixed. We want to see even distribution of DNFs through the season. It keeps it exciting, but it also means that no one team gets away because they're super reliable and the others aren't. The flip side of the coin to that, you have Mercedes, who have had a brilliant result today. George getting home in third position, just because obviously the Ferrari has dropped out and he's always there ready to pick up the pieces so he's got his podium. The Ferraris don't finish. He comes in, he gets his podium. He now is fourth in the championship on 99 points, just plugging away, making sure that if Mercedes can fix their issues, they will be there. Russell will be there, still in and around the fight, keeping Mercedes in the conversation. But they do need to fix it soon because we are right near halfway through the season now. So if Mercedes are going to have anything to say about retaining their Constructors' Championship, they need to switch things now, and those upgrades need to come in. So interesting, but George has done everything he can do. Hamilton, a much more difficult race for him today, still coming home in fifth position, but brilliant drive. Much more difficult because of obviously he qualified further down the grid, so he got caught up in more of the issues today than George did. But to get home fifth place, obviously, he pitted under the virtual safety car, dropped him back into the pack, but he had the fresher tyres, so it brought him through the grid again. He made the most of them, didn't crash, kept it, made the moves when they were on, and came home for a safe and a good result for him in fourth position. So really good. Best that Mercedes could have hoped for, really. Excusing any DNS for Red Bull. Obviously, if they dropped out, then it could have been a seriously great drive for Mercedes today. But the Red Bulls were on point, so best that they could have hoped for today with a 3-4 finish for Mercedes, but really good. I think the biggest problem for Mercedes at the moment, even before the race, Toto Wolff was obviously talking about potentially not just them but wider in F1 changing the regulations because of the issues it's causing to the drivers' backs. Obviously, this is impacting Mercedes more than the other teams as it stands. You see the porpoising going on, the bouncing up and down. It is absolutely dreadful. We had Hamilton complain about back issues. We didn't hear it from Russell so much, but we know that there's a design flaw in that car. The issue that Mercedes have is that if they go to the FIA and say, we want a regulation change, if the FIA can prove that Mercedes could simply make a change to raise the ride height and it would resolve the issue to the driver's health, that then is put back on Mercedes to make that choice. The issue that Mercedes then have is that when they raise the ride height, it completely negates the performance of the car. They will drop back into the pack if they do that, and they won't be a car worth talking about. So right now, it genuinely comes down to a choice between the driver's health and the performance of the car, and that is horrendous. Obviously, Mercedes are busy trying to gather support from other teams, maybe suffering, that maybe haven't been so vocal, but their drivers also having back issues from the way that these modern new regulation cars are designed. So they'll be hoping that they get enough teams on board, that some regulation changes are made that help the cars get rid of this porpoising issue. But Mercedes do have their option to run the car higher, so I don't think the FIA are going to be quick to change anything. But it certainly doesn't bode well for Mercedes' title challenge. If small, but they'll still be hoping they can fix things title challenge into the rest of the season. But they'll at least be hoping for best of the rest. But if those if they can't fix the issues that are potentially now going to injure their drivers, we could see them actually drop off in performance if they can't fix the issues, because you can't sustain what could potentially be a long-term injury if they're repeated back issues. That could impact them for the rest of their lives. So it is definitely something that they need to keep into consideration into the next races in the season. Moving on, we'll talk about McLaren. So really good, decent drive for both drivers today. Daniel Ricciardo with a much better performance than we saw from him in Monaco. Maybe the tracksuit's in better, but he needed this today, coming home ahead of Lando. Obviously, Lando right up his backside into the final lap. But right at the beginning of the race, when they were initial strategy, they told Ricciardo to hold station behind Lando, so it was only fair at the end that they returned the favour. We heard that on the radio. Obviously, Lando not too happy. He was trying to find a way around it, but it was fair, in my opinion, that Lando held station behind Danny Ric. I think Alonso ahead of them showed that actually he had the pace all along. McLaren simply couldn't put the pressure on Alonso at the end of the race to take an extra position, and letting Lando through wouldn't have helped. Fernando putting in his best lap of the race right near the end just to show that he did have them covered. So they came home to a decent result today, and fair play to them. But yeah, really good performance from the McLarens today. So yeah, an 8th place finish for Danny Ric and a 9th place for Lando Norris. So again, I think that's about the best that they could hope for. We did obviously see Norris drop back into the pack, and he did use his tyres to get back up through the grid and back up behind Danny Ric, who ran really long on his tyres in the first stint on the hards, because he started on the hards, one of the only drivers to do so, and then under the virtual safety cars coming in, getting his fresh tyres, worked out to be a really good strategy call in the end. You never know how those things are going to play out. They are working on percentage chance that it's going to play, but if he hadn't done that, it's quite possible he would have finished outside the points. So really good strategy call from the team, really good drive from Danny Ric, and Lando doing all he could on the fresh tyres to get back up behind him and put pressure on Danny Ric to get up to Alonso. But as we said, that wasn't going to happen. They came home for the 8th and 9th, which again I think is the best that they could hope for. Obviously, again, making the most of the fact that the Ferraris didn't finish, because otherwise Lando would have been outside the points, and maybe that would have changed their positioning on whether or not there are any more team orders. But really good drive. Did what they could today. Was never going to be their best weekend, especially considering McLaren were the slowest car in the straight, so absolutely had to make the most of DRS. But in the slow corners, they were decent. We've seen this season they are decent in the slow corners, so fair play to them. Really good. Moving on to Aston Martin, Vettel, another brilliant drive. For me, he's the driver of the day. To see Vettel up in 6th place, I think is absolutely brilliant. Did nothing wrong today other than that mistake down into turn 3. Obviously, quickly pirouetted the car, really good. Only lost 2 positions and 6 seconds, which, considering he went straight on at turn 3, is pretty good. But came back from that to come home 6th. Should have really finished 5th, I think. I think if he hadn't had that problem, probably would have come home ahead of Pierre Gasly, because he would have had position. But regardless, I think really good drive, considering that how many issues that Aston Martin's had for pace. Really brilliant showing. And you only have to compare that to the race that Lance Stroll has had and the performances Stroll has had this season. You know, they only have for 15 points to their name this season. 13 of them are Vettel. That shows you how poor Lance Stroll's been on just 2 points this season. I think Stroll needs to desperately justify his position in the team. He cannot continue to be there just because his dad owns Aston Martin. Now, I'm fully aware he will be there just because his dad owns Aston Martin. I really doubt that he'd ever, allow for Stroll to leave. But to save them embarrassment, he needs to step up his game. He ended up not finishing the race today, but up until the point where he DNF'd, he was only just about running in front of Latifi and Schumacher. He was no factor in the race whatsoever. And obviously after the issues had on the Saturday, putting it in the wall twice in one lap, it's just not good enough. It's not F1 standard. He has clearly got the car to do better. And obviously, he's not going to be near the front, but Vettel showing what the car can do, and Vettel himself has not been the Vettel of old in the last couple of years. So there's arguments to say there could be even more to get out of this car than what Vettel's shown, and Stroll's nowhere near it, so he needs to pick up his game soon. But again, another difficult weekend for Stroll, but good haul of points from Vettel, and I'm sure Aston Martin will be really pleased with that. Looking at AlphaTauri, Gasly, best of the rest behind the front three teams. Really, really brilliant job bringing it home for 5th place today. Continues to show what a good driver he is and shows why he's contemplating leaving the Red Bull group. We've obviously seen the extension of contract for Perez, which has led to rumours about Gasly basically leaving, not after this season, but after next season, if nothing changes. So I certainly think he should. I think it's time for Gasly to move on from the Red Bull stable. It's quite clear now, again, unless something drastic changes, he's not going to be given that opportunity at Red Bull to be a front-running team. So he should be looking to leave, get into a project, get something that might give him an opportunity to fight at the front if things go his way. But he is too good a driver to sit in a second-string junior team, because it will never be fighting at the front. At least if he goes to an Aston Martin, an Alpine, a McLaren, they might be able to create a car that fights at the front, but Red Bull will never allow AlphaTauri to be ahead of them. So he never stands a chance of winning a race consistently with an AlphaTauri team. So my view is he's too good for that junior team anymore. Needs to move on, help another team develop, and he's certainly continuing to show that he's good enough to do that. I think we'll see that moving forward. And Tsunoda, again, good drive from him today. Weird issue with his rear wing. I can't remember when the last time we saw a black and orange flag was. If you know, let me know in the comments below, but I certainly can't remember. My memory doesn't work that well to know when we last saw a black and orange flag. We saw what looked like the rear wing split in half, and then you could see that there was a latch that had come loose that was completely sheared in the end. So they gaffer taped his wing back together. By the time they'd done that, he was out the race. And he was back outside of the points, and he didn't have time to recover, and he couldn't use the DRS anymore because obviously they had to duct tape it shut, so that was gone. But as I say, it was too late in the race for him to come back through. But up until that point, it was no fault of his own either. He'd had a good drive, decent drive, not quite up to the pace of Gasly, but I think he would have finished well in the points had he not had that issue. So no issues with Tsunoda. I think from the driver's point of view, really good weekend. Weird issue with the rear wing. They're obviously going to need to get fixed, but both drivers with a good performance today for AlphaTauri, so they will be pleased with that. Alpine, Alonso breaking the record for the longest career as an F1 driver this weekend, and bringing home a brilliant 7th place finish today. So fair play to Alonso, giving him something to celebrate along with that achievement, as we saw Ocon coming home for the final points place. So once again outperforming his younger teammate, once again showing how good a driver he is despite his elder years, and now having that achievement of having the longest career in F1 from first race to his latest race, because he's not gone yet. So yeah, really, really good drive for him. We obviously saw that the Alpines were the quickest cars in the speed traps this weekend. So when they had similar tyre pace, pretty much none of the other cars could get past them because they were just so quick in a straight line. Obviously DRS, when other cars came up behind them and as their tyres were graining, we saw cars start to overtake them. but in a straight line they were brilliant. That obviously gave Alonso the platform he needed to come home in 7th place. They weren't that great around the rest of the track, but on those long straights they were great, and it allowed them to defend really, really well. Ocon coming back through for the 10th place finish, so decent race from Alpine this weekend. I think they'll be pretty happy with that. Keeps them in 5th place in the championship. Not too far away from McLaren, so McLaren on 65 points, Alpine on 47, so they will be looking to hunt down McLaren. It'll be interesting to see how that battle unfolds over the next few races between McLaren and Alpine, but Alpine with a decent performance today, finishing right in the middle of the McLarens. So yeah, sorry, right, sandwiching the McLaren. So really, really good, interesting fight there between those two teams. Let's see how that plays out into the next few races. Williams, another good drive by Albon, showing what the car can do on a Sunday. We see week in, week out that the Williams is simply not good enough on a Saturday, but on race pace, really good car. Albon has continued to show that. He only driver as well at the team to score points. Yes, he only has 3, but you can see he keeps getting near the points. He really is showing that there is pace in that car. So really, really good job from Albon, taking over from Russell what he was achieving the previous season. And I think Albon's always been considered a quick driver. Now really, really showing it. I think everyone's happy for him that he is doing that. Latifi, though, God, it was bad before it even started. He had the 10-second stop and go penalty because his engineer touched his car and to push it back into the grid slot. But it was after the 15-second alarm had gone, so they got a 10-second stop go penalty for that right off the bat, and that was guaranteed before the race has even started. And then later on in the race, he got an additional 5-second penalty because he ignored blue flags. You'd think, given he's always at the back, he'd understand what a blue flag is by now, but he's probably just frustrated, and he probably just stayed in front of a car for too long. But in the position that Latifi's in, I think he's the most likely driver to lose his seat this season. I don't think he'll be the only one, but expect that position to go next year and someone else to be partnering Albon in that Williams. Probably a young up-and-coming driver, probably Nick de Vries, unless Hamilton maybe took an opportunity to retire. I don't think he will, so I do think we'll see Nick de Vries and Albon in the Williams next year. We have seen some flashes of Latifi having good races last year and bringing the fight to Russell, but on the whole, across the season, I think we've seen enough now that Latifi just isn't to the standard of an F1 driver. He's obviously, has performed well in F2 in the past and has, as I said, had flashes of performances in that Williams, but he isn't consistent enough. He's yet to score a point for the team. I think they need to make a change. They won't do it, obviously, mid-season, but look to Nick de Vries replacing Latifi next year. That, I believe, will be very much on the cards, as I say, unless something magical happened at Mercedes, which I don't expect it to. Now, Alfa Romeo, again, difficult drive from them, impacted first of all by the engine issues. So Zhou on for a good race, on to score some points, and the Ferrari engine issues strike again. He's out of the race and DNFing. So really good drive from Zhou, but not the weekend he would have hoped for in the end. Bottas not had the great Saturday, but another good, strong performance from him to bring the car up to 11th. So I think Bottas did all he could on race day. A bit of quiet from them in terms of the TV coverage. We didn't see too much of them other than other cars overtaking them. So difficult to give a full review of the performance of Bottas. But to come home at 11th, considering the weekend that they'd had, and they didn't have a lot of pace in the car, at least he didn't have the engine issues that Zhou did, so he did make it to the end. But unfortunately for him, he just missed out on the points, coming home in 11th. So unfortunate. But Bottas still continuing to show that he's got, he's a good driver. Give him the car that he had earlier in the season where it was far more competitive. And I think, again, we'll see Bottas fighting in Q3 and for points in the races. But not a great weekend for Alfa Romeo, but a decent drive from Bottas and Zhou, despite the issues that they had. And finally, Haas. So with Haas, Magnussen, again, showing what a good car that they've got on race day. He had a really strong race. He didn't actually, he obviously had the DNF, parking up on the side, again, because of another Ferrari engine issue. But he was having a strong race up until that point. So really unfortunate for him. And obviously Mick as well, down there, just in front of Latifi, really, really struggling in that car. I don't put him down with Latifi in the sense I expect him to lose his seat, but I think those conversations will start to happen if he doesn't have a few good results soon. He needs to get the points for that team. So we can see that Kevin Magnussen has 15 points for Haas this season. Mick Schumacher has none. He needs to get off the board now. He's been close. Spain, he came really close. The tyres went away from him. He lost a few positions at the end, but he was so close to getting his first point. Better strategy probably would have done it for him. But, you know, we're clutching at straws at this point, really, with Mick. He needs to prove again, similar to Stroll, he's not there because of his name, obviously for different reasons. But yeah, there's only so long the Schumacher name will protect him. He needs to up his game. When he does, and I think he can, he's proven what a good driver he can be. And it took him a couple of years in F2 to really get up to speed. And obviously he's got brand new cars in F1 this year. So maybe it will take him a couple of seasons to get up to speed. But you don't get time in F1. And I think his name will give him more time than other drivers would probably get. I think if it wasn't for his name, he might be as much under pressure as a driver like Latifi is, given the performances of their counterparts versus them. So definitely need to see an improvement from Mick into the second half of the season. Really, really need that, especially if he can do that into Canada next week. That would be the best for him. But certainly for the rest of the year, we need to see something from Mick that shows he's ready for the fight. But so that's all the teams gone through. As I say, decent race in the end in Baku. It started off pretty boring after the first couple of laps, but it built up. And I think as the strategies were playing out and as we got some close fighting into the second half of the race, it was really, really good. Some really good midfield battles as well. So I think another good race at Baku. Just unfortunate for the Ferraris, they couldn't obviously not avoid those engine issues to keep the fight to the Red Bulls to the end. But I say, Vettel, driver of the day for me today, up for bringing that Aston Martin, which has been so terrible, up to a brilliant 6th place finish. And looking forward to the race into Canada next year. Make sure to let me know in the comments below what you thought of the race today. What were your big takeaways? Who was your driver of the day? But otherwise, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Really, really appreciate when you do. Make sure to like the video if you did like it. Otherwise, I'll wish you a great day and say goodbye.